I'm going to just speak for a few minutes from the Great Torah to sort of inaugurate this lovely building, and then read a short tefillah from the Chidah, which is designed for Chaunukat HaBayit. Now, obviously, did you select this purposely on Chanukah? Was this like a purposely done, planned out? Planned out, right? The Germans, they plan everything. Nothing is left to the last.
Yeah, just stop smiling.
So I want to discuss two halachot, two laws in the Rambam's halachot, hilchot Chanukah, laws of Chanukah, which are codified based on statements in the Talmud, Tractate Shabbat, which deals in the main, in that section, in that chapter, with the laws of Chanukah. The Talmud asks the question, Mai Chanukah? What is the responsibilities and the ideology behind Chanukah? And it enters a whole discussion over there. In contrast to Ner Shabbat, the Talmud is interested in the details of Ner Chanukah. And we actually read, Bamei Madlikin, we read it Friday nights in the synagogue, those of you who go Friday nights. So we have a Mishnah in Shabbat which discusses with what materials is it suitable to light the Ner Shabbat that we all like, which oils, which wicks are suitable for the mitzvah. And then the Talmud leads to a discussion in its own style into the Ner Shel Chanukah, the mitzvah of lighting a candle on Chanukah. What materials can we use, and so on and so forth. So the Talmud over there seems to put strong emphasis on this mitzvah. Both mitzvot are rabbinic. Neither of them are biblical in origin. Both the mitzvah of Ner Shabbat and Ner Chanukah. Both of them were one of the laws which were instituted by the early sages in the era of the prophets, the end of the era of the prophets. So both of them have a similar legal status in the eyes of the Talmud. Now, officially, how many Shabbat candles are we supposed to light? Anybody? I'm going to turn to the ladies because it's so dead. Technically, we're equal in the mitzvah too. Two? Anybody else would like to offer a more correct opinion? Maybe I should bring it to the men. Let's think of the bracha that you made. Lahadlik ner shel Shabbat. The obligation is to light a candle. The custom is to light two. Every community has their own custom, one for each child, you know, one for each chandelier that you have, whatever. But in essence, the obligation, the legal rabbinic obligation was to light one candle, Ner Shel Shabbat, and also Chanukah. The base, everybody is extremely religious on Chanukah, and we light with what we call Hidur. We light these candles which exceed in number every night. But again, the legal responsibility, as the Talmud says, is Ner Ishu Veto. One candle per family. One house, one candle each night. That's the basic requirement. That which we light is additional. That which we light is sort of a beautification of the mitzvah. It's an extra way to perform the mitzvah. So we see that the legal requirements are quite similar. Both of the obligations of Shabbat and of Chanukah is to light a single candle. Now, from a modern halachic perspective, the sages have established that electricity would actually work for the Ner Shel Shabbat. If somebody is unable to light a candle which is fueled by oil or wax, they are permitted to light electricity with a bracha. So then technically they could make the bracha and then switch on the electric light, which is useful if people find themselves in buildings where they cannot, if you're in a hotel or something and you cannot actually light a candle for Shabbat, you can say the bracha on the electricity and you can light the electricity. It will cover the mitzvah of Shabbat, but it will not cover the mitzvah of Chanukah. Why does it not cover the mitzvah of Chanukah? What's different about Chanukah that we cannot use electricity? The ones that we see in the windows, right? The Christmassy ones that we see in the windows. You cannot actually make a bracha on the electricity ones. Why not? Right, because this is Echel Hanes that you are commemorating, Pirsume Hanes, you are commemorating the miracle that was performed, And that was performed with oil. Because it seems, in the situation that they found themselves when they were rededicating the temple, as we all know the story from childhood, the temple was in a bit of a mess, and most of the oil that they found was not in a state that they would consider sufficiently pure to light the Ner Chaunukat, the Ner of the menorah. And they had to travel to a certain area of Israel to get the best olives. Anybody know where they had to go to? I'll give you a clue. It's very close to Mount Carmel. Mount Carmel. Everybody, do you know where Mount Carmel is? If you picture the map and you're going like this, and then you have like a little roundy bit, and you go down again. That roundy bit is Mount Carmel. Mount Carmel is Carmel, which is, of course, Kerem Shel El. Carmel means, right, Mr. Carmeli? Is the vineyard of God. Vineyard of God. Carmel is a contraction of Kerem El, is the vineyard of God, because the land of Asher was the most bountiful land, and the produce, the vineyards and the olive groves were of a standard greater than the rest of Israel. And so the olives were picked from the land of Asher, and it took them 3 and a bit days to get there and back. It was about 7 days. And therefore, to get fresh oil took them a long time. And therefore, they were relying on that one jug of oil that they had. That's one opinion. The second opinion is that the people who were fighting the battle, are there any Kohanim in the room? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the Kohanim, usually the Kohanim were not fighters in Jewish history.
Still not.
I know one.
They fight, but they fight with their mouths. The reason that they were usually not fighters because there was a problem with tumat met. So if you have to kill a man, it's awkward because you'd have to go and do temple service, and it would take you a week to purify yourself. So what you have to do, just in case you ever get into that situation, you gotta, you stick the sword in, you've got to pull it out while he's still alive and watch him die without contact. Because if he died, right, you've got to pull the sword out, right, pull it out. Just remember, pull it out. So that way you remain pure. Pull it out, remain pure.
Note to self.
I'm not in the synagogue now, right? We're going to the So the other interpretation is that the Kohanim were all involved in the war and therefore required 7 days of purification. So that was the hesitation, that we needed pure Kohanim to handle the oil, and therefore we only had 1 jug of pure oil, and we didn't have Kohanim that were ready to produce the next batch. So these two opinions are basically the delay that we had. And the Talmud says, and it's codified in the Rambam, which is very important, because if a law is just seen to be vaguely described in the Talmud and it's not legalized, it's not codified, it means it's cute. If it's codified, it means that there are practical implications of how you should live. Understand the difference? There's a big difference. So here these laws are codified. And it says here, quoting Maimonides, the mitzvah shel ner Chanukah mitzvah chaviva hi mo'od, that the mitzvah of that candle, the single unit of oil that you are obligated to light for Chanukah, is extremely, extremely important, to the extent, and this is something that's very rare in the Talmudic text, he has to publicize the miracle and to show the thanksgiving to God and so on and so forth. Even if he doesn't have what to eat, meaning to say that he is somebody that would collect charity for his food. Ela min hatzdaka, shoel, he must beg or borrow. Mocher ksuto b'shuk, even to the extent that he would sell the garment on his back to obtain the oil that is sufficient to light the one candle, the basic obligation. Afilu mocher atzmo, even he has to sell himself. Meaning to say that you have these lines of people that have to sell themselves for a day labor. You get like, there's a line in Port Washington and there's a line in Queens, right? You need a guy, right? Ladies probably don't know much about that, but you need a guy to do a little job or something, you know, and you want to get a deal, so you go there and you get somebody from the line. You say 200, you know, 3 of you, and then they join the car. They know what I'm talking about. The law is saying that to the extent that if you don't have what to put on the table ner Chaunukat, that you have to join that line. That's an excessive statement in the Talmud, because the usual system of law in Torah, even for biblical laws, anus sarachmana patre, the Talmud says somebody is unable to perform the mitzvah financially or for other reasons, then he would be exempt. But this is one of the few exceptions where the Talmud says you are not exempt, which is quite bizarre. It's quite bizarre. Why would this rabbinic unit of oil that we light, each night, to that extent that you're obligated to sell your garments, that you're obligated to sell yourself for the day, and so on and so forth. And the explanation comes from a commentary of the Talmud, the Pnei Yehoshua, which describes that there was something unique about the miracle. And people think that there was only one jug of oil, which means to say that if they didn't have this miracle, the menorah would not be lit for those 7 days. It would be empty for 7 days. That's the normal understanding, correct? That the one jug of oil was sufficient for one night, meaning to say that the other 7 nights until they would get a fresh batch, it would be empty. So the Talmud says, no, that's not correct, because there is a law with the temple service called Tumah Hutra Barabim, which means to say that when there are nothing pure in the temple to continue the services, since the obligation is a continuous daily obligation, ner tamid, you are allowed to use impure oil if you do not have pure oil. Does everyone understand what that means? It means day 1 you had pure oil. Day 2 the Kohen comes to do the service and says, you know what? We need a fresh batch. We've sent our men to Mount Carmel to get some more olives. But the show goes on. Meaning day 2 you use impure oil. Which means to say that the miracle was performed was an unnecessary miracle. It was unnecessary on the basis that the law allowed them to use impure oil on day 2. Because Tumah Hutra, that if you don't have Kohanim that are pure, if you don't have the materials that are pure, you carry on the service in an impure way until you have purity to continue the services. And that's the key to this concept, chaviv me'od, how this mitzvah is so dear. Because the expression, the miracle, was produced in a situation that wasn't even necessary. It went beyond the requirements, as if to give faith and hope to the people that were witnessing the miracle and understanding the battle that they just fought was in that context, that it wasn't just a lucky day, that somebody was on your side. And therefore this mitzvah has this high standard over and above other mitzvot, for which normally you would say, you know what, you don't have bread for Shabbat, so you make kiddush on the wine. No big deal. You can't afford a pair of tefillin, patur. You don't have access. You don't have to go and sell yourself to get a pair of tefillin. But then the Rambam continues to the last law which I want to discuss with you, which the philosophical implications are huge to the Jewish tradition. So the Talmud says, now that we've established that the Ner Shel Chaunukat, the mitzvah of the oil unit for Chaunukat, is so important, what do you do if you find yourself in the marketplace on Friday night and you have $1 in your pocket and you have to purchase a unit of oil, and you go home and you've got only 1 unit of oil? So the Talmud says, Hayal lefanav ner beito ner Chaunukat. He has 1 candle to light, and it's Shabbat, right? 1 candle. Now, either you make the bracha lahadlik ner shel Shabbat, and you light it ner beto, or you say lahadlik ner Chaunukat, and you light that single candle dedicated to Chaunukat. Remember, we light additional candles, but that is bonus candles. The essence, the basic mitzvah is a single candle. So now that we've established that Chaunukat is so important, and both of them are on the same plane of rabbinic requirements, so what should the Talmud have concluded? Obviously, which one is more important? Ner Chaunukat. So the Talmud concludes, and importantly the Rambam codifies, Ner Beito Kodem, the Ner Shel Shabbat comes first. Why does it come first? There is a concept, Tadir She'eno Tadir Kodem, that something which is done more frequently and something which is done less frequently, then we do that which is commonplace first. However, that is not the principle that is invoked in the Talmud. So close, but as we say in English, no cigar. That's a beautiful concept, but it reflects to say that that which is commonplace takes precedence. You know, it's useful in everything. That you see your parents every day, but that doesn't mean that you have to treat them with less respect than somebody you see once a month. But here, the Talmud invokes a different concept. The focus of the Ner Shel Shabbat was instituted by the sages for what reason? I'm going to go back to the ladies because this is a ladies' question. Ladies. You're not allowed to answer.
I'm a lady.
Ladies, why do we light Ner Shabbat? What did the sages say? Nobody?
Shalom Bayit.
So, Shalom ve'oneh is the principles of the Talmud. You have to be ma'aneget Shabbat. You have to have delight and pleasures and comfort, and it should be a pleasurable experience. And the Talmud seems to describe a scenario that you come home and there's no light in the house, and the husband is grumpy, right? Like the old Iranian grumpy men. Where is the food? Dr. Kamei is definitely an exception to this rule. The average Iranian man that you see of his age is grumpy. And if he comes home and it's dark and they're stumbling over things and falling over, then he's going to shout at the wife, and the wife's going to shout at the kids, and we all know these scenarios. So Ner Beito, the Ner Shel Shabbat, is written essentially to produce an environment in the home which is conducive towards peace. The Ner Shel Chaunukat is a candle which is lit in honor of God. Pirsumei Nisa, for the miracle that he performed, that he didn't even have to perform. But the Talmud says Ner Beito Kodem. Why? Because, as the Talmud says so beautifully, Shalom al Hakol, that there is very few things in the tradition that exceed the importance of a man's relationship with his wife and the family's relationship with the children. The environment in the home takes precedence, because if the home is weak, then everything is weak. If the home is not structured with mutual respect, nothing can work. There's no meaning to praise God in a home where there is conflicts day in and day out. There is no meaning to such a thing. And therefore, Ner Beito Kodem. And the commentaries bring a proof from Isha Sota. Isha Sota is a very delicate situation that was applicable to temple period. A woman was accused of cheating on her husband, and she has a way to prove her innocence. In the Talmudic era, she would be taken to the temple, and she would be forced or offered to drink, if she was willing to perform the ceremony, a drink which was made from having a text that's written on a cloth dissolved in water, and the ink was mixed into the water. Then they took a little bit of dust from the Kodesh, from the sanctuary, and they added it to the solution, a little bit of a stir, right? Sort of a religious cocktail. And then she would drink it, and if it would not destroy her, it would prove her innocence. So if she was innocent and she wanted to prove her innocence, she had this technique. So the sages say that God's name was written on that text, which was dissolved in the water. If God himself had a formula to bring peace between a man and a wife, the peace that was attacked by this claim of adultery, and God himself is willing to have his name dissolved, which is one of the prohibitions of the Torah, then surely he would not want you to choose his honor over Shalom Shel Beito. And therefore the sages say, Shalom Al Hakol, the candle is lit, Lahadlik Ner Shel Shabbat, because this is the paradigm principle of the entire Torah. Nitivotea Shalom, B'chol Darcheha. I'm going to read the pasuk to you inside. The ways of the Torah must be a way of pleasantness. The pathways that come through the Torah have to lead to Shalom, meaning that that is the ultimate destination. If you notice that whenever we finish a tefillah, we finish with one line, same line. Shalom. And if people very rarely stop to understand what that means. Oseh Shalom bin Romav means the one who makes peace in the upper world. Oseh Shalom bin Romav, the one who manages, despite the conflicts between all of the angels and all of the religious decisions that are made up there and the spiritual conflicts and everyone trying to get a better position with God, somehow there's order, there's peace, there's respect. Hu Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu. This is a prayer that is the khatimah of everything. It's the khatimah for everything. The end of the Amidah, the end of Birkat HaMazon, and even the Birkat Kohanim, our Kohen that's hiding over there. What is the last part of your prayer? You only got 3 psukim, come on. Why is it the final prayer? Because it's the be-all and end-all. If there is no peace, if there is no respect, then any of these religious attainments are completely meaningless. And therefore, as the Rambam concludes, Ner Shel Beito, the Ner of Shabbat, comes first. I know you're very hungry. Just 30 seconds. We're going to read a short tefillah in honor of Natalie and Avi. Baruch atah b'bo'echa v'yi Adonai et Yosef v'yish matzliach v'yidaved l'chol derech maskil v'Adonai imu v'yinom Adonai Eloheinu aleinu ma'aseh yedenu kona aleinu ma'aseh yedenu konanei v'anabahu gedolah v'yiminech tzura g'velenata me'echaseh g'veinu ta'areinu nora נגיבור דורשי היחודיך ובשומרים מלכים תרם ירחמי צדקה כתמיד גומלם חסין קדוש ברוב טובך נעלתך יחיד גאה למך בני זוכרי קדושתך שבני קבל שמחתתנו יודע תעלמות הנה אנחנו מעלומים בתוך השדה והנה כמה מעלומתי וגם ניצב בה והנה תצאו בין מעלומתכם ושברינה לעלומתי יהי רצון מלפניך אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו מלך רחום וחנון שתתמלא רחמים עלינו רוב רחמך בזכות שמות הקדושים יוצאים מפסוקים אלו, תצליחנו לנו לכל זרענו בבית זה, בכלל ובפרט נהיה כולנו מוצלחים, בורכים בכל מכל כל, תצילנו מעין רע, מכל חטא, מכל חולי, מכל צרה, וידתנו בכל מקום בתים מלאים כל טוב, מוצלחים, בורכים לנו ולזרענו, אמן נצח צלע ואל. We pray this house will be a house of blessing.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. That your house in Chava Sasson, you have great celebrations in this house, and most importantly of all, that you raise your children to be great members of our great community.
Amen.